I was standing in my garage in Phoenix, Arizona, staring at the empty space where my brand new Honda EU 7000 IS generator had been sitting just 3 hours earlier, and I knew exactly who had taken it. My name is Ethan Turner, and I had lived in the Sagebrush Springs HOA community for exactly 8 months. 8 months of increasingly bizarre complaints, passive-aggressive notes, and run-ins with the HOA president, a woman named Brenda Carmichael who embodied every Karen stereotype you could possibly imagine. She was 52 years old with that signature. I want to speak to the manager haircut, bleached blonde with dark roots perpetually showing, and she wore her HOA president badge like it was a Medal of Honor. The woman had made my life a living hell since the day I moved in, complaining about everything from my mailbox being the wrong shade of black to my grass being a 1/4 inch too long on a Tuesday afternoon. But stealing my generator, that was a new level of crazy, even for Brenda. I had bought the generator 2 weeks ago for $3,000 because Arizona summers are brutal and power outages are common. The thing was top of the line, quiet, efficient, and most importantly, it had a built-in GPS tracking device that the salesman had insisted I activate. At the time, I thought it was overkill. Who steals a generator from inside someone's garage? But I had activated it anyway, linking it to an app on my phone because why not? Now, as I pulled out my phone and opened the tracking app, I watched the little blue dot that represented my generator moving steadily through the streets of our neighborhood. It was currently sitting at 2847 Desert Rose Lane, which happened to be Brenda Carmichael's address. I should not have been surprised. Just yesterday, Brenda had shown up at my door with her clipboard and her pursed lips, demanding to inspect my garage because someone had reported that I was storing unapproved equipment on the premises. I had told her to get a warrant or a court order, which had made her face turn an impressive shade of purple. She had threatened me with fines, liens, and every other thing she could think of before storming off my property. Apparently, she had decided to take matters into her own hands. I stood there in my garage, the late afternoon sun beating down on the concrete driveway, and I had to make a decision. I could call the police right now, show them the GPS evidence, and get my generator back. But something told me that this situation could be handled in a way that would be far more satisfying and would potentially free me and my neighbors from Brenda's tyranny once and for all. I pulled out my phone and called my buddy Marcus, who worked as a private investigator in Scottsdale. We had gone to Arizona State University together, and he owed me a favor from when I had helped him move last year. "Marcus, I need your help with something, and I need you to bring your good camera," I said when he picked up. "What kind of trouble are you in, Ethan?" Marcus asked, but I could hear the amusement in his voice. "The HOA kind," I replied. 20 minutes later, Marcus pulled up in his Ford F-150, carrying a professional camera with a telephoto lens that probably cost more than my generator. He was grinning as he walked up my driveway. "So let me get this straight," Marcus said as we sat in my living room and I explained the situation. "Your HOA president stole your $3,000 generator, and you have GPS proof that it is sitting in her garage right now." "That is exactly what I am saying," I confirmed, showing him the tracking app on my phone. Marcus whistled low. "Man, I have dealt with some crazy HOA stories in my line of work, but this takes the cake. What is your plan?" "I want to document everything," I said. "I want photos of the generator in her possession, I want a paper trail, and I want to make sure that when I go to the police, I have an airtight case. But more than that, I want to find out if she has done this kind of thing before. You know how to access property records and public documents, right?" "I do," Marcus said, his expression turning serious. You think she has been stealing from other residents? I think Brenda Carmichael has been abusing her power for a long time, and I think my generator might just be the tip of the iceberg, I said. There is a guy 3 houses down, Robert, who mentioned that his pressure washer disappeared from his backyard last month. And the couple across the street, the Hendersons, they said someone took their patio furniture right off their deck. Everyone just assumed it was random theft, but now I am wondering. Marcus nodded slowly. Let me make some calls. In the meantime, we should get some surveillance photos. If that generator is in her garage, we need proof beyond just GPS coordinates. We drove over to Desert Rose Lane in Marcus's truck, parking a few houses down from Brenda's place. It was a typical Phoenix subdivision home, cream-colored stucco with a terracotta tile roof and a meticulously maintained front yard. Her HOA president sign was prominently displayed in her front window, and her American flag was flying at exactly the regulation height, naturally. Garage door is closed, Marcus observed, looking through his camera lens. We need to catch her with it. The tracking app shows it is definitely in there, I said, checking my phone again. We just need to wait. And wait we did. For 2 hours, we sat in that truck in the Arizona heat, watching Brenda's house. Marcus took photos of the property, documenting everything. At one point, Brenda came out to get her mail and Marcus got several clear shots of her face. That is definitely a Karen haircut, Marcus muttered, and I had to stifle a laugh finally, just as the sun was starting to set and I was beginning to think we would have to come back tomorrow. Brenda's garage door began to open. We both sat up straighter, and Marcus raised his camera. Brenda walked into her garage, and there it was. My Honda EU 7000 IS generator, sitting right next to her white Lexus SUV. The serial number was visible on the side, and Marcus's camera clicked rapidly as he captured image after image. Got it, Marcus said with satisfaction. Clear shots of the generator, the serial number, and her standing right next to it. This is solid evidence, Ethan. But Brenda was not done. As we watched, she bent down and started examining the generator, running her hands along its side. She seemed to be looking for something, and I suddenly realized what it was. She is looking for identifying marks, I said. She is going to try to remove anything that traces it back to me. Sure enough, Brenda pulled out a screwdriver and started working on the small metal plate where I had engraved my name and phone number. She was trying to pry it off. Are you getting this? I asked Marcus. Every second of it, he confirmed. This is gold. She is actively trying to conceal stolen property. After about 10 minutes, Brenda gave up on removing the plate and instead covered it with duct tape. Then she closed the garage door and the show was over. All right, Marcus said, lowering his camera. We have got her dead to rights. What is next? Now we dig into her background, I said. I want to know everything about Brenda Carmichael before I go to the police. If she has been doing this to other people, I want to nail her for all of it. We went back to my place, and Marcus set up his laptop on my dining room table. As a private investigator, he had access to databases and public records that the average person did not, and he put those resources to work. Okay, Brenda Carmichael, age 52, married to Donald Carmichael, who is apparently an accountant at a firm downtown. Marcus read off his screen. They have lived at that address for 6 years. She has been HOA president for the last 4 years. No criminal record, not even a parking ticket. What about civil cases? I asked. Lawsuits, small claims, anything like that. Marcus clicked through several screens. Now that is interesting. She was sued 3 years ago by a former neighbor, someone named Patricia Evans. The case was settled out of court. Records are sealed. Can you find Patricia Evans? I asked. Already on it, Marcus said, his fingers flying across the keyboard. Looks like she moved to temp after the lawsuit. I have got a phone number here. I took the number and stepped outside to make the call. It rang 4 times before a woman's voice answered. Hello, hi, is this Patricia Evans? I asked. Yes, who is this? My name is Ethan Turner, and I live in Sagebrush Springs HOA. I am calling because I am having some issues with the HOA president, Brenda Carmichael, and I saw that you had a lawsuit against her a few years ago. I was hoping you might be willing to talk to me about it. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Then Patricia said, That woman is a nightmare. What did she do to you? She stole my generator out of my garage, I said bluntly. I have GPS tracking and photo evidence, but I think she might have been doing things like this for a while, and I want to build a case against her. She stole from me too, Patricia said, her voice bitter. Garden tools, outdoor decorations, even a bike from my garage. I could never prove it, but I knew it was her. The lawsuit was about something else, about her abusing her HOA authority and trying to force me to make expensive modifications to my property that were not actually required. But the theft was happening at the same time. She made my life so miserable that I finally just sold my house and moved. The settlement included a non-disparagement clause, so I cannot talk about the specifics of the case, but I can tell you that Brenda Carmichael is a thief and a bully. Would you be willing to talk to the police if I file a report? I asked. Absolutely, Patricia said without hesitation. I would love nothing more than to see that woman face consequences. Do you have proof? I have GPS tracking and surveillance photos, I said. My generator has a built-in GPS device and it is sitting in her garage right now. Patricia laughed, a sharp, delighted sound. Oh, that is perfect. That is absolutely perfect. Yes, call me when you talk to the police. I will tell them everything. I thanked her and went back inside where Marcus had continued his research. Found 2 other former residents who had issues with Brenda, Marcus said. One moved to Gilbert, the other to Chandler. Both sold their homes within the last 3 years. I am seeing a pattern here. She has been running a racket, I said, shaking my head. Using her position as HOA president to harass people and steal from them, and when they complain, she makes their lives so difficult that they move. The question is, why? Marcus asked. I mean, we are talking about a pressure washer and some patio furniture. Your generator is the most expensive thing and it is still only $3 grand. Her husband is an accountant. They own their home outright. They are not hurting for money. It is not about the money, I said. It is about power. She gets off on controlling people and taking their stuff. It is a sickness. Marcus leaned back in his chair. So what is the play here? We go to the police tonight. I thought about it for a moment. No, not yet. I want to set a trap first. I want her to incriminate herself even further. What do you have in mind? Tomorrow morning, I am going to file a police report about the theft, I said. But before I do, I am going to send an email to the entire HOA board and all the residents, asking if anyone has seen my generator. I am going to describe it in detail, including the serial number. I want to see what Brenda does when she realizes people are looking for it. Marcus grinned. You think she will panic and try to move it? I think there is a good chance, I said. And when she does, we will be watching. I like the way you think, Marcus said. That night, I crafted a carefully worded email to the entire Sagebrush Springs HOA community. I described my generator, included photos of it, listed the serial number, and explained that it had been stolen from my garage sometime between noon and 3 p.m. that afternoon. I asked anyone who had seen anything suspicious to please contact me or the Phoenix Police Department. I included a note about the GPS tracking, saying that I was working with the authorities to locate it. I hit send at 10 p.m., knowing that Brenda was the type of person who checked her email constantly. Sure enough, within 15 minutes, my phone rang. It was a number I did not recognize, but when I answered, I heard Brenda's unmistakable shrill voice. "Ethan Turner, this is Brenda Carmichael from the HOA board. I received your email about your missing generator." "Yes, Brenda," I said, keeping my voice neutral. "It was stolen from my garage this afternoon. I am working with the police to recover it." "Well, I certainly hope you find it," Brenda said, but her voice sounded strained. "However, I need to remind you that according to HOA regulations, you should not have been storing a generator in your garage without prior approval from the board. This is exactly the kind of issue I was trying to address when I attempted to inspect your garage yesterday." I could not believe what I was hearing. She was actually trying to blame me for the theft because I had not gotten HOA approval for my generator. "Brenda, someone stole $3,000 worth of my property," I said, letting some anger creep into my voice. "I do not really care about HOA regulations right now. I care about getting my generator back." "Well, perhaps this will serve as a lesson about following proper procedures," Brenda said primly. "In the future, please submit all requests for equipment storage to the board for approval." "Is there anything else?" "No, Brenda, that will be all," I said and hung up before I said something I would regret. Marcus, who had been listening to my end of the conversation, shook his head. "She has some serious nerve." "She is scared," I said. "That email rattled her. Now we wait and see what she does." Marcus agreed to stake out Brenda's house overnight, taking shifts with me. We set up in his truck again, parked far enough away to not be obvious but close enough to see her garage door clearly. At 2:30 in the morning, the garage door opened. "There she is," Marcus whispered, grabbing his camera. Brenda was dressed in dark clothes and she was struggling to wheel my generator out of her garage. The thing weighed about 130 pounds, and she clearly had not thought through the logistics of moving it by herself. She got it down the driveway and then stopped, breathing hard. Marcus was taking photos with a camera that was equipped for night photography, the rapid clicks of the shutter barely audible. "Where is she taking it?" I wondered aloud. We got our answer a moment later when a dark-colored pickup truck pulled up to the curb. A man got out, and even from a distance, I could see it was Donald Carmichael, Brenda's husband. "The husband is in on it too," Marcus said quietly, documenting everything. Together, Brenda and Donald lifted the generator into the bed of the pickup truck. They were trying to be quiet, but the metallic clang of the generator hitting the truck bed echoed through the silent neighborhood. Donald threw a tarp over it, and then they both got into the truck and drove off. "Follow them?" Marcus asked, already starting the engine. "Follow them," I confirmed. We kept a safe distance as Donald's truck wound through the empty Phoenix streets. At this hour, there was almost no traffic, which made following them easier but also made us more conspicuous. Marcus was good at this, though, occasionally letting another car get between us or hanging back at stoplights. After about 20 minutes, the truck pulled into a storage facility called Secure Space Storage on the east side of Phoenix. We watched from across the street as Donald entered a code at the gate and drove inside. The gate closed behind them. "Storage unit," I said. "She is trying to hide it. We cannot follow them in without the code," Marcus said. "But we know which facility it is, and we have photos of them moving the generator at 2:30 in the morning. That is pretty damning." "Can you find out if Brenda or Donald have a unit here?" I asked. Marcus pulled out his phone and made some notes. "I can check tomorrow." Storage facilities keep records of their renters. If I can get a unit number, that is even better for the police report. We watched the facility for another 30 minutes until Donald's truck emerged, empty. The tarp was still in the bed, but the generator was gone. Brenda was sitting in the passenger seat, and they drove straight back to Desert Rose Lane. "All right," I said as we followed them back. "I think we have got everything we need. Tomorrow morning I am going to the police." Marcus dropped me off at my house just as the sun was starting to come up. I was exhausted but too wired to sleep. Instead, I made a pot of coffee and started organizing all the evidence we had collected. The GPS tracking data showing the generator's movement from my house to Brenda's house to the storage facility. The photos Marcus had taken. Patricia Evans's phone number and statement about previous thefts. And the email exchange with Brenda where she essentially blamed me for having my property stolen. At 8 a.m., I called the Phoenix Police Department non-emergency line and explained that I wanted to file a theft report. They told me an officer would be at my house within an hour. Officer Rodriguez showed up 45 minutes later. He was a young guy, probably late 20s, with a professional demeanor and a notepad at the ready. "Mr. Turner, you reported a theft," he asked as I invited him into my living room. "Yes, officer. My generator was stolen from my garage yesterday afternoon, and I have substantial evidence about who took it and where it is now." I spent the next 30 minutes walking Officer Rodriguez through everything. I showed him the GPS tracking data, the photos Marcus had taken, the video footage from my own security camera showing that my garage was empty at 3 p.m. when I had gotten home from work. I explained about Brenda's attempted inspection the day before, about Patricia Evans and the other former residents who had reported thefts, and about the midnight move to the storage facility. Officer Rodriguez listened carefully, taking detailed notes. When I finished, he looked up at me with something like amazement on his face. "Mr. Turner, in my 5 years on the force, I have never seen a victim come to me with such thoroughly documented evidence," he said. "The GPS tracking alone is solid, but combined with the surveillance photos and the witness statements, this is an open and shut case." "So you will arrest her?" I asked. "I need to verify a few things first, but yes, we will be executing a warrant for the storage facility and Miss Carmichael's residence," Officer Rodriguez said. "Grand theft in Arizona is a serious charge, especially with this dollar amount and the evidence of premeditation. The fact that she moved the property in the middle of the night to hide it shows consciousness of guilt." "What about the other thefts?" I asked. "The other residents who have had property stolen. We will investigate those as well," Officer Rodriguez said. "If we can establish a pattern of behavior, the charges will be even more serious. Do you have contact information for these other victims?" I gave him Patricia Evans's number and the names of the other former residents Marcus had found. Officer Rodriguez thanked me and said he would be in touch soon. For the rest of that day, I tried to go about my normal routine, but it was impossible to concentrate on anything. I kept checking the GPS app on my phone, watching the blue dot that represented my generator sitting motionless in that storage facility. I wondered how long it would take for the police to get a warrant and execute it. I got my answer that evening. At 6 p.m., there was a knock on my door. It was Officer Rodriguez, accompanied by an older detective named Martinez. "Mr. Turner, we executed search warrants at the storage facility and at Miss Carmichael's residence this afternoon," Detective Martinez said. "We recovered your generator from a storage unit rented under Donald Carmichael's name. We also found several other items that may have been stolen from other residents, including a pressure washer, patio furniture, garden tools, and various other equipment." "You are kidding," I said, though I was not really surprised. "She was hoarding stolen stuff. It appears that Miss Carmichael has been stealing from HOA residents for quite some time," Detective Martinez continued. We are in the process of cataloging everything and reaching out to potential victims. We arrested both Brenda and Donald Carmichael this afternoon. They are currently being held on charges of grand theft, burglary, and trafficking in stolen property. Both of them, I asked. Mr. Carmichael admitted that he knew about the thefts and helped his wife move and store the items, Officer Rodriguez explained. He claimed he was trying to protect her, but that makes him an accessory at minimum. What happens now? I asked. Your generator has been logged as evidence, but we will release it back to you as soon as the initial processing is complete, probably within a day or two, Detective Martinez said. We will need you to testify if this goes to trial, though honestly, with the evidence you have provided, I suspect they will take a plea deal. Happy to testify, I said. What about the HOA? She is the president. What happens to the organization? That is a civil matter, Detective Martinez said. But I imagine the HOA board will need to elect a new president and deal with the fallout. You might want to consult with the other board members about next steps. After the officers left, I sat down and sent another email to the HOA community, this time explaining that the police had arrested Brenda and Donald Carmichael for theft and recovered numerous stolen items. I suggested that anyone who was missing property should contact Detective Martinez at the Phoenix Police Department. Within minutes, my inbox started filling up with responses. Some people were shocked, others were angry, and several admitted that they had suspected Brenda of stealing but had never had proof. One email stood out from a woman named Carol Jenkins, who was the HOA vice president. Ethan, thank you for finally bringing Brenda's crimes to light. Many of us on the board have been uncomfortable with her behavior for years, but she has been very good at manipulating situations and covering her tracks. I would like to call an emergency board meeting to discuss next steps and elect a new president. Would you be willing to attend and explain what happened? I wrote back agreeing to attend, and Carol scheduled the meeting for 2 days later at the community clubhouse. The next morning, I got a call from an unknown number. When I answered, a woman's voice said, "Mr. Turner." This is Rebecca Alvarez from the Arizona Republic. I am a reporter covering local news, and I heard about the arrests in your HOA. Would you be willing to talk to me about what happened? I hesitated. Part of me wanted to stay out of the spotlight, but another part of me thought that publicity might prevent future HOA boards from abusing their power the way Brenda had. Yes, I will talk to you, I said. We met at a coffee shop in Scottsdale, and I told Rebecca the whole story. She took notes furiously, occasionally stopping to ask clarifying questions. When I mentioned the GPS tracking device, her eyes lit up. That is the perfect detail, she said. The HOA president who did not know the generator had GPS tracking. That is going to make a great headline. The article came out the next day on the front page of the local section. HOA president arrested after stolen generator's GPS leads police to storage unit full of stolen property. Rebecca had done a thorough job, interviewing Patricia Evans and other former residents, getting statements from the police, and laying out the entire timeline of events. The story went viral on social media, with people sharing it and commenting about their own HOA horror stories. My phone would not stop ringing. I got calls from other reporters, from lawyers wanting to discuss a potential civil suit against the Carmichaels, and from neighbors wanting to thank me. The story had struck a nerve because everyone had either dealt with a nightmare HOA situation or knew someone who had. The emergency HOA board meeting was packed. The clubhouse could fit maybe 50 people, and there had to be at least 70 residents trying to cram inside. Carol Jenkins had to ask people to please step outside and listen through the windows. Carol called the meeting to order and immediately addressed the situation. As you all know, Brenda Carmichael and her husband Donald have been arrested for theft and related charges. The board has voted to immediately remove Brenda as president and to cooperate fully with the police investigation. We owe a debt of gratitude to Ethan Turner for documenting the evidence that led to these arrests. There was a round of applause, and I felt my face getting hot. I was not comfortable being the center of attention, but I appreciated the support. Now we need to discuss what happens next, Carol continued. First, we need to elect a new president. Second, we need to review all of Brenda's actions as president to make sure there are no other irregularities. Third, we need to implement new policies to prevent this kind of abuse of power from happening again. A man I recognized as Tom Harrison, who lived a few streets over, stood up. I would like to nominate Carol Jenkins for president. She has been vice president for 3 years, and she has always been fair and reasonable. There was a chorus of agreement, and Carol was elected unanimously. Then a woman named Sarah Mitchell raised her hand. I want to talk about what we do to make sure this does not happen again. Brenda had way too much unchecked authority. She was inspecting properties without proper notice, issuing fines without board approval, and apparently just letting herself into people's garages. Wait, what? I said. She let herself into my garage. How else did she steal your generator? Sarah pointed out. Did you leave your garage door open? I thought back to that day. I had left for work at 7:30 in the morning and my garage door had been closed. I had an automatic opener, but I had not given anyone the code. I need to check my security footage again, I said, pulling out my phone. I had a camera that covered my driveway, and I pulled up the footage from the day of the theft. At 1:15 p.m., a white Lexus SUV pulled into my driveway. Brenda got out, walked up to my garage, and punched in a code on the keypad. The door opened, and she walked inside. She had my garage code, I said, showing the footage to the people around me. How the hell did she get my garage code? Carol's face went pale. Oh no, oh this is bad. What? Several people asked at once. When you move into Sagebrush Springs, you have to fill out an information form with emergency contact information, Carol explained. That form also asks for gate codes and garage codes in case there is an emergency and the HOA or first responders need access to your property. The forms are supposed to be kept confidential and only used in genuine emergencies. Let me guess, I said. Brenda had access to all those forms. Carol nodded miserably. As president, she had access to all HOA records. If she had everyone's garage codes, she could have been stealing from people for years. The room erupted in angry voices. People were shouting about privacy violations, demanding to know if their homes had been burglarized and calling for legal action. Carol had to bang a gavel to restore order. Okay, everyone, please calm down. This is a serious issue and we need to handle it properly. I am going to contact Detective Martinez and inform him about the garage codes. That may help explain how Brenda accessed people's properties. In the meantime, I strongly suggest everyone change their garage codes and any other access codes immediately. I was already texting Detective Martinez the security footage showing Brenda using my garage code. He responded within minutes, thanking me and saying this would strengthen the burglary charges. The meeting went on for another 2 hours as residents shared their own stories of missing items and suspicious behavior by Brenda. It turned out that the storage unit full of stolen property was just the beginning. People started checking their garages and sheds and realizing that tools and equipment they thought they had misplaced had actually been taken. One man, George Chen, stood up and said, My wife and I lost a bunch of camping equipment last year. We thought we had left it somewhere on a trip, but now I am wondering if Brenda took it. Is there any way to check what was in that storage unit? The police are cataloging everything, Carol said. Detective Martinez told me they would be posting a list online for residents to review and claim their property. If you think something of yours was stolen, you should file a police report. By the end of the meeting, it was clear that Brenda had been running a theft ring for at least 3 years, possibly longer. The exact number of victims and the total value of stolen property was still being calculated, but it was going to be substantial. 3 days later, I got my generator back. Detective Martinez called me to pick it up from the evidence department, and I drove down to the police station with Marcus, who wanted to see how the story ended. "Mr. Turner, here is your property," Detective Martinez said, rolling out my Honda generator. It looked exactly as I had left it, except for the duct tape Brenda had put over my engraved nameplate. "We have completed our initial processing, and since we have plenty of photographic evidence, we do not need to hold onto the physical item anymore." "Thank you, Detective," I said. "Any updates on the case?" Brenda and Donald Carmichael are both out on bail, but they are facing serious charges, Detective Martinez said. "We have identified 23 separate victims and over $40,000 in stolen property. The county attorney's office is treating this as organized theft, which carries enhanced penalties." $40,000, Marcus said, whistling. "That is way more than a few garden tools." "Miss Carmichael apparently had expensive taste," Detective Martinez said dryly. "She was stealing high-end equipment, tools, furniture, even some jewelry from one resident's garage. We think she may have been selling some of it, though we are still investigating that angle." "Is there anything else you need from me?" I asked. "Just stay available in case we have follow-up questions or need you to testify," Detective Martinez said. "But honestly, Mr. Turner, you did most of the work for us. That GPS tracker was the key to breaking this whole thing open." Marcus and I loaded the generator into the back of his truck, and as we drove back to my house, I felt a strange mix of satisfaction and exhaustion. I had gotten my property back, Brenda was facing justice, and the HOA was implementing reforms to prevent future abuse. But the whole experience had been draining. "You okay?" Marcus asked, glancing over at me. "Yeah, just tired," I said. "I moved to Sagebrush Springs because I wanted a quiet neighborhood with decent amenities. Instead, I got a criminal conspiracy and a media circus." "At least you will never have to deal with Brenda Carmichael again," Marcus pointed out. That was true, and it was a comforting thought. Over the next few weeks, the legal process moved forward. Brenda and Donald Carmichael were formally indicted on multiple counts of burglary, grand theft, trafficking in stolen property, and fraud. The fraud charges came from the fact that Brenda had been issuing fake HOA fines and keeping the money for herself rather than depositing it into the HOA account. Carol Jenkins, as the new HOA president, had launched a complete audit of the HOA's finances and discovered that over $15,000 in fines and fees that Brenda had collected were missing. Brenda had apparently been pocketing cash payments and altering records to cover her tracks. The depth of Brenda's criminal activity was staggering. She had not just been stealing property, she had been running a corruption scheme that involved fake fines, unauthorized property inspections, and financial fraud. The more investigators dug, the worse it got. I was at home one evening, finally starting to feel like my life was returning to normal when my doorbell rang. I opened it to find a middle-aged couple I did not recognize. "Are you Ethan Turner?" the woman asked. "Yes, can I help you?" My name is Linda Morrison, and this is my husband Paul. We lived in Sagebrush Springs until 2 years ago. We sold our house and moved because Brenda Carmichael made our lives unbearable. We saw the news coverage about her arrest, and we wanted to thank you for finally exposing her. I invited them in, and over coffee, Linda and Paul told me their story. Brenda had targeted them with constant fines and complaints, claiming their house was not up to HOA standards. When they pushed back, their outdoor furniture disappeared, and their garage was broken into twice. They could never prove Brenda was responsible, but they knew it was her. Eventually, they decided it was not worth the stress and moved to a non-HOA community in Chandler. We lost so much money selling that house, Paul said. We had only lived there for 3 years, and we sold it at a loss just to get away from Brenda. Now we find out she was a criminal the whole time. Have you talked to the police? I asked. We filed a report yesterday, Linda said. Detective Martinez said our case fits the pattern and he wants us to testify if it goes to trial. Are you going to sue her? I asked. We are talking to a lawyer about it, Paul said. There are apparently several former residents who are considering a class action lawsuit for the harassment and financial losses. I gave them my contact information and told them I would be happy to help in any way I could. After they left, I realized that Brenda's crimes had affected far more people than anyone had initially realized. The 23 victims whose property was recovered from the storage unit were just the ones who could prove their losses. There were probably dozens more who had been harassed, fined, and driven out of the neighborhood. The criminal case moved quickly. Brenda and Donald's lawyer tried to negotiate a plea deal, but the county attorney's office was not interested in going easy on them. The case had attracted too much media attention, and there was public pressure to hold HOA officials accountable for abusing their power. 2 months after the initial arrest, the case went to trial. I was called to testify on the 3rd day. I had never been in a courtroom before, and I was nervous as I walked up to the witness stand. The prosecutor, a sharp woman named Jessica Chen, walked me through the events of that day. I explained about buying the generator, about Brenda's attempted inspection, about coming home to find it stolen, and about tracking it to her house. Mr. Turner, when you discovered your generator was missing, what was your first thought? Jessica asked. I knew immediately that Brenda Carmichael had taken it, I said. She had tried to inspect my garage the day before, and when I refused, she was very angry. The timing was too coincidental. And the GPS tracking device in the generator, when did you activate that? The day I bought it, 2 weeks before it was stolen. The salesman recommended it for theft prevention, and I figured why not. Jessica nodded and pulled up a map on a large screen. Can you describe for the jury what the GPS tracking showed? I walked through the timeline, showing how the generator had moved from my house to Brenda's house and then to the storage facility. The jury watched intently as I described checking the app and seeing the blue dot at Brenda's address. Brenda's lawyer, a tired-looking man named Richard Hoffman, tried to poke holes in my testimony during cross-examination. Mr. Turner, is it possible that someone else stole your generator and simply brought it to Miss Carmichael's property? He asked. No, I said firmly. The security footage shows Miss Carmichael entering my garage using my private garage code and removing the generator. She is the only one on the footage. But you did not actually see her take it in person, correct? Correct. But the video evidence is clear. Richard tried a few more angles, but there was not much he could do. The evidence was overwhelming. The trial lasted a week. In addition to my testimony, the prosecution called Patricia Evans, Robert, who had lost his pressure washer, the Hendersons who had lost patio furniture, and several other victims. They presented the surveillance photos Marcus had taken, the GPS data, the security footage from my garage, and the inventory of stolen items from the storage unit. Detective Martinez testified about the investigation and about Brenda's access to residents' garage codes through the HOA records. A forensic accountant testified about the missing HOA funds and the fake fines. Donald Carmichael testified in his own defense, trying to claim he had not known about the stolen property. But the prosecution showed surveillance footage of him helping Brenda move my generator in the middle of the night, which destroyed his credibility. Brenda did not testify. Her lawyer advised her to remain silent, which was probably wise because she would have been destroyed on cross-examination. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours before returning with a verdict: guilty on all counts for Brenda, guilty on most counts for Donald. Sentencing was scheduled for a month later, but the judge remanded them to custody immediately, denying bail. Brenda looked shocked as the bailiff led her away in handcuffs. I think she had genuinely believed she would get away with it, that her position as HOA president somehow put her above the law. At the sentencing hearing, I sat in the gallery with Marcus and several of the other victims. The judge, a stern woman named Honor Rachel Perkins, listened to impact statements from multiple victims before pronouncing sentence. Miss Carmichael, you held a position of trust in your community, Judge Perkins said. People relied on you to act in their best interests, to protect their properties, and to enforce reasonable rules fairly. Instead, you exploited that trust to commit burglary, theft, and fraud on a massive scale. You stole from your neighbors, you harassed them, and when they complained, you made their lives so miserable that many of them felt forced to leave their homes. This is not a minor offense. This is a systematic abuse of power that caused significant financial and emotional harm to dozens of people. Judge Perkins sentenced Brenda to 8 years in prison, with the possibility of parole after 5. Donald received 4 years for his role in helping conceal the stolen property and assisting with the thefts. Additionally, the judge ordered them to pay full restitution to all victims, which totaled over $60,000 when financial losses and property damage were included. As I walked out of the courthouse that day, I felt a sense of closure. Justice had been served, and Brenda Carmichael would spend years behind bars thinking about what she had done. But the story did not end there. The civil lawsuits were just beginning. Patricia Evans and the Morrisons, along with 8 other former residents, filed a class action lawsuit against Brenda and Donald Carmichael for harassment, emotional distress, and financial losses. They were seeking damages for the decrease in property values they suffered from being forced to sell quickly, moving expenses, and the stress of dealing with Brenda's campaign of harassment. The Sagebrush Springs HOA also faced potential liability. Several victims argued that the HOA board should have done more to stop Brenda, and that the policy of collecting residents' garage codes was negligent and created an opportunity for theft. Carol Jenkins and the new board worked with a lawyer to settle those claims, ultimately agreeing to pay for security system upgrades for all homes in the community and implementing strict new policies about information security and board oversight. As for me, I got my generator back. I got restitution for the full value plus my time and expenses. And I got the satisfaction of knowing that Brenda Carmichael would never be able to terrorize another HOA community. The media attention eventually died down, though I still occasionally get recognized at the grocery store or the hardware store. The GPS tracker story became a popular cautionary tale on social media, And apparently sales of GPS-enabled generators and tools spiked in the Phoenix area after the story broke. Marcus joked that I should become a professional HOA investigator, but I was perfectly happy to return to my quiet life as a software engineer. Though I did join the HOA board as the new treasurer, figuring that I should probably be involved in the community governance to make sure we never ended up with another Brenda Carmichael situation. Carol Jenkins turned out to be an excellent president. She was fair, transparent, and actually cared about making the community better rather than just exercising power. The HOA implemented new bylaws that required board approval for any property inspections, eliminated the collection of garage codes, and created a transparent process for fines and appeals. Several months after the trial, I was sitting on my back patio on a pleasant October evening when my doorbell rang. It was Detective Martinez. "Mr. Turner, I wanted to stop by and give you an update," he said. "We finally finished the investigation into all of Miss Carmichael's activities." And I asked, inviting him in. Final count: 37 victims, over $75,000 in stolen property and fraudulent fines, and evidence that she had been committing these crimes for at least 5 years, Detective Martinez said. "Your case was the one that broke it open, but once we started digging, we found evidence of thefts going back to when she first became HOA president." "That is insane," I said, shaking my head. "How did she get away with it for so long?" "A combination of factors," Detective Martinez said. "She was careful to target people who were new to the community or who she thought would not fight back. She spaced out the thefts so it did not look like a pattern. And she used her position of authority to intimidate anyone who questioned her. It was actually a pretty sophisticated operation." "Do you think she acted alone, or were there others involved?" "We investigated that thoroughly, and it appears she acted alone except for her husband helping with some of the later thefts," Detective Martinez said. "Donald claimed he only found out about it a year ago, and while I do not entirely believe that, we could not prove he was involved earlier. The rest of the HOA board was completely in the dark." "Well, I am glad it is over," I said. "Me too," Detective Martinez agreed. "Cases like this restore my faith that good evidence and solid police work can bring criminals to justice, even when those criminals think they are above the law." After Detective Martinez left, I sat back down on my patio and thought about everything that had happened. 4 months ago, I had been just another homeowner dealing with an annoying HOA president. Now I had helped bring down a criminal operation and had become a minor local celebrity in the process. My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. "Hey, saw on the news that Brenda's appeals got denied. She is definitely doing the full 5 years minimum. Want to grab a beer and celebrate?" I smiled and texted back. "Absolutely. Meet you at the usual place in 30. As I got ready to head out, I walked through my garage and looked at my Honda generator, sitting in its usual spot with my name proudly engraved on the side and the GPS tracker still active. That $3,000 investment had led to taking down one of the most corrupt HOA presidents in Phoenix history. Sometimes the smallest decisions have the biggest consequences. If I had not bought that generator, or if I had not activated the GPS tracking, or if I had just let Brenda get away with the theft, who knows how much longer she would have continued stealing from and harassing residents. How many more people would have been driven from their homes? But I had made those decisions. I had documented the evidence, and I had seen it through to the end. And now Brenda Carmichael was in prison where she belonged. The HOA was under new management, and Sagebrush Springs was actually becoming the peaceful community I had hoped for when I bought my house. As I drove to meet Marcus, I passed the Sagebrush Springs entrance sign. Someone had put up a new banner underneath it that said, "Under new management, a community that cares." Carol Jenkins's idea, no doubt, and a good one. The bar was busy when I arrived, but Marcus had snagged a booth in the back. He raised his beer in a toast as I sat down. "To GPS trackers and karma," Marcus said. "And to good friends who help with surveillance photography," I added. We clinked glasses, and I felt genuinely content for the first time in months. The whole ordeal with Brenda had been exhausting and stressful, but it had also taught me some valuable lessons about standing up to bullies, documenting everything, and the importance of community. A couple at the next table recognized me and came over to introduce themselves. They lived in a different HOA community in Scottsdale and wanted to thank me for shining a light on HOA corruption. "Our HOA president is not as bad as yours was, but she definitely abuses her authority," the woman said. "After seeing your story, several of us have started documenting everything and pushing back. We actually just voted her out last month." "That is great," I said. "HOAs can be good when they are run properly, but they need oversight and accountability." "Exactly," the man agreed. "Your story inspired a lot of people to stop putting up with bad HOA boards." After they left, Marcus laughed. "You are like the Rosa Parks of HOA reform." "That is a bit dramatic," I said, but I could not help smiling. We spent the next couple of hours catching up and rehashing the whole story. Marcus had been approached by several lawyers about consulting on HOA investigations. Apparently, there was a growing need for documentation in these kinds of cases. "You should do it," I said. "You are great at the surveillance work, and if you can help other people build cases against corrupt HOA officials, that is a good thing." "I am thinking about it," Marcus admitted. "It is actually more interesting than most of my usual PI work, which is mostly cheating spouse cases and insurance fraud." As the evening wound down and we prepared to leave, my phone rang. It was Carol Jenkins. "Ethan, sorry to bother you, but I wanted to give you a heads up," Carol said. "The restitution money came through from the Carmichaels. The court seized some of their assets, and checks are going out to all the victims next week." "That is good news," I said. "There is more," Carol continued. "The HOA board voted to give you a special commendation for your service to the community. We are going to present it at next month's board meeting if you are willing to accept it." "You do not have to do that," I protested. "We want to," Carol said firmly. "What you did took courage, and you saved this community from a criminal. The least we can do is acknowledge that publicly." I agreed to attend the meeting, and after hanging up, I told Marcus about the commendation. "See, you are a hero," Marcus said. "I am just a guy who had his generator stolen and decided to do something about it," I replied. But as I drove home that night, I had to admit that it felt good to be recognized. Not for the attention or the praise, but because it meant that what I had done mattered. I had made a difference in my community, and that was worth all the stress and hassle. The following week, I received a check for $3,200 from the Court Restitution Fund, the full value of my generator plus documented expenses for my time and Marcus's investigative work. The Carmichaels had been forced to liquidate investments and sell Donald's truck to pay the restitution to all the victims. I also received a letter from Brenda's lawyer informing me that she was dropping her threatened countersuit against me for defamation and harassment. Apparently, her lawyer had explained that suing the person whose testimony helped convict you was not a winning strategy. The commendation ceremony at the HOA board meeting was surprisingly touching. Carol gave a speech about the importance of community vigilance and individual courage. Several of the other victims spoke about how my actions had helped them get justice. Patricia Evans drove up from Temp specifically to attend, and she gave me a hug and thanked me for doing what she wished she had done years ago. They presented me with a plaque that read, "Presented to Ethan Turner in recognition of extraordinary service to the Sagebrush Springs community and for upholding the principles of justice and accountability. October 2025. I hung it in my garage, right above where the generator sat." Life slowly returned to normal. The news crews stopped calling. The curious neighbors stopped dropping by. The HOA board meetings became boring again, which was exactly how they should be, discussions about landscaping contracts and pool maintenance schedules, not criminal investigations. I settled into a comfortable routine of work, weekend barbecues with neighbors, and occasional rounds of golf with Marcus. The generator sat in my garage, ready for the next power outage, but hopefully never to be stolen again. One Saturday afternoon, about 6 months after the trial, I was washing my car in the driveway when a moving truck pulled up to Brenda and Donald's old house. A young couple got out and started directing the movers. I walked over to introduce myself. "Hi, I am Ethan Turner. I live a few streets over. Welcome to Sagebrush Springs." "Thanks, I am Jake Rodriguez and this is my wife Amy," the man said, shaking my hand. "We are excited to be here. The realtor said this is a great community." "It is now," I said. "It went through some rough times recently, but the HOA is under good management now." "We heard something about that," Amy said. "Something about the previous HOA president being arrested." "It is a long story," I said. "But the short version is yes, the previous president was corrupt and she is now in prison. The new president is great though, Carol Jenkins. You will meet her soon. She is fair and actually cares about making the community nice to live in." "That is good to hear," Jake said. "We were worried about HOA horror stories when we were house hunting." "Just a piece of advice," I said. "Document everything. If you ever have an issue with the HOA or with anything else, keep records, take photos, save emails. It makes a huge difference if you ever need to prove something." "Will do," Jake said. "Thanks for the advice." As I walked back to my house, I thought about how much had changed. That house, which had been the center of a criminal operation, was now going to be home to a nice young couple starting their lives together. The neighborhood that had been terrorized by a corrupt HOA president was now thriving under honest leadership. And I had played a small but important role in making that transformation happen. My phone buzzed with a news alert. It was an article about HOA reform legislation being introduced in the Arizona state legislature. Apparently, my case and several others had prompted lawmakers to look at ways to increase oversight of HOA boards and protect homeowners from abuse of power. The proposed law would require HOAs to carry liability insurance, mandate financial audits, and create a state-level complaint process for homeowner grievances. I forwarded the article to Carol Jenkins with a message. "Looks like some good changes coming. Let me know if the board needs any input on the legislation." She wrote back immediately, "Already on it. I am actually testifying before the committee next month. Want to come with me?" I thought about it for a moment, then replied, "Sure, why not?" And that is how I found myself standing before the Arizona State Legislature's Commerce Committee 2 months later, telling the story of my stolen generator and the GPS tracker that brought down a criminal HOA president. The committee members listened intently, and several of them asked questions about how the current system had allowed Brenda to operate unchecked for so long. The legislation passed both houses and was signed by the governor in the spring. It was not perfect, but it was a step in the right direction, creating more accountability and giving homeowners more recourse when HOAs overstep their authority. By the time the one-year anniversary of the generator theft rolled around, Brenda Carmichael had been in prison for 8 months and was reportedly not doing well. According to Detective Martinez, who I still saw occasionally at community events, she had filed multiple appeals and complaints, all of which had been denied. She was scheduled for her first parole hearing in 4 more years. Donald had been released after serving 1 year with good behavior. He had moved to another state and was reportedly working as an accountant again, though he had lost his CPA license due to the conviction. As for the Sagebrush Springs HOA, it had become something of a model for good governance. Carol Jenkins ran the board with transparency and common sense. We had monthly open meetings where any resident could voice concerns. We had implemented electronic voting for major decisions. And we had created a resident oversight committee to review any complaints about board actions. Property values in the neighborhood had actually increased once word got out that the corrupt HOA president was gone, and the community was well managed. Several houses that had been sitting on the market for months sold quickly. New families moved in, and the community had a renewed sense of energy and optimism. I remained on the board as treasurer, keeping a careful eye on the finances and making sure every penny was accounted for. It was not glamorous work, but it was important, and I had learned that sometimes the most important work is making sure the boring stuff is done right. Marcus had indeed started specializing in HOA investigations as part of his PI business. He had worked on 3 cases in the past year, helping homeowners document evidence of HOA corruption and abuse. 2 of those cases had resulted in criminal charges, and the 3rd had led to a successful civil lawsuit. "You started a trend," Marcus told me over beers one evening. "Homeowners are fighting back against bad HOAs, and they are using your playbook. Document everything, use technology to gather evidence, and do not be afraid to go to the police when crimes are committed." "I just wanted my generator back," I said, but I was smiling. "Sure, but you did not stop there," Marcus pointed out. "You built an airtight case, you helped other victims come forward, and you saw it through to the end. That takes guts." As I sat on my patio that evening, enjoying the cool desert air and looking out at the community pool where kids were splashing and laughing, I felt a deep sense of satisfaction. Not because I had been vindicated or because I had gotten recognition, but because I had stood up for what was right and had helped make my community a better place to live. The generator sat in my garage, its GPS tracker still active, a silent reminder of the day everything changed. I had bought it for peace of mind during power outages, never imagining it would lead to exposing a criminal conspiracy and reforming HOA governance across Arizona. Sometimes life surprises you in the strangest ways. Sometimes the simple act of protecting your property leads to something much bigger. And sometimes, standing up to a bully, even one with a clipboard and an HOA badge, can change everything. Brenda Carmichael thought she was untouchable, that her position as HOA president put her above the law and beyond accountability. She was wrong, and now she sits in a prison cell, probably wondering how it all went so wrong. The answer was simple: she stole from the wrong guy. She stole from someone who had the tools to track her, the determination to pursue justice, and the courage to see it through to the end. She stole from someone who refused to be another victim who just moved away quietly. She stole from someone with a GPS tracker in his generator. And that made all the difference.